Hi, I'm Joan Newcomb, and today's Mystic Minute is about accessing unseen help. I actually had pulled back from teaching about this about a year ago. I'd gone through this, I've actually been going through this transformation with my awareness of consciousness, where the unseen help that I had worked with had transformed into electrons. And my sense of working with the unseen had gone out of being something I could project personality onto. So it became very difficult to say how to work with unseen help without these familiar markers. And anyway, what it ended up doing was having me come through this period where it was almost like being an atheist or an agnostic, because the projection of personality was out of it. And there was almost like a flatness to it as well. There still kind of is. There's a flatness to it. So the upside to this is that there wasn't kind of roller coaster drama of any kind or interpersonal drama, which doesn't really happen when you're working on an unseen level, but in your own space it does. But the downside of it was there was a feeling of there being no help. To this point that I actually took a webinar off of my coaching program offering, which was Accessing Unseen Help. So if any of you had signed up for those things and seen it there and then suddenly it wasn't, that's why I took it off, because it wasn't in present time with my teachings or how I was feeling. So an interesting thing happened recently is that someone reached out to me to do a transformation game workshop. I'm a trained facilitator in the transformation game. It was a game that was invented at Findhorn, and I was trained by the two women that invented it back in 1997. So I've been doing it for a long time, but that too had kind of faded to the background in the last couple years. So I find myself saying, yes, I will facilitate this workshop in my new house. So I have a lovely space for it. That's going to be on Thursday. And all these little revelations are happening as I'm preparing for it. And the very first one is that you work with the Diva of Transformation. All the programs that I have been putting out in the last 2 years have had transformation in the title. That's the core thing that I do. And I was thinking back to when I first trained as a facilitator back in 1997. I found the Diva of Transformation was too intense, was very intense, that anytime I would connect to or work with the Diva of Transformation, my entire world would fall apart. And I realized that I work with the Diva of Transformation all the time now. I just don't personify it as the Deva anymore or the angel anymore, but it is definitely the morphic field or the energy quality of transformation. And I also get to facilitate this workshop, and as the facilitator of the transformation game, I am the one that chooses the overarching Deva of the game itself. I'm the one that invokes the angels into the game, that acknowledges their presence, that leads people in meditations to experiencing their qualities and gifts. So in my today's language, I wouldn't acknowledge the unseen help aspect of this. It is me creating this reality as consciousness. And in yesterday's language of it, it certainly feels like the unseen is showing up. And where I can relate to this is like putting out the call for assistance, or I could use some help with this, and having the assistants show up. They're just not on payroll, but they're able to work behind the scenes. I've been working with the unseen realms since 1981. My very first course, I think, was either a psychic meditation class or a spiritual healing class. And in a spiritual healing class, you'd get assigned a healing guide. And so from those very beginnings, I've always worked with the unseen, and the unseen is more real to me than the seen. So the fun thing about working with the unseen is that they can do things for you that require absolutely no effort. And on a simplistic level, they can find you parking spaces. They can help fix your computer. You can send them off on little projects like that. Nowadays, what I do is I send out sub-personalities to do some of those things. So that's another aspect of myself. I've been dealing with some technical glitches on my website, and I sent out my sub-personality the other day to figure out how to embed this thing. And I'm kind of curious to see how it works out, because I'll be working on that later today after I get this video out. How do you put this code onto this thing with this new plugin? Sent my sub-personality out to do it, and so when I get around to doing it, it'll be done. So it's kind of a different aspect of working with an unseen aspect of yourself. So the mindset of working with the unseen, very much like working with angels or saints, and I wasn't raised in a church that acknowledged saints. Presbyterians don't really have saints. I mean, we don't really work that way. So it's fascinating when I, as an adult, got into how does the saints thing work? They're embodied qualities, just like the angels that I learned from Fintorn. They are embodied qualities, and in my own mindset of that would be something that I needed to know that was outside of me, and I would connect with Deva, angel, saint, it's interchangeable really, to receive more of that quality. Now my awareness is that I am consciousness, and as consciousness, I embody all of that. Consciousness is the cosmic internet. I have access to all of that. I can't download it all into this hard drive, but I can access it in the cloud. So as I'm playing with this analogy, I realize that even in real life, in accessing things in the cloud, there are unseen helpers we have all the time. We don't know the IT people who design these things, or the tech people who work for Amazon or Google. We don't really know what's behind the scenes. And actually, even as I say that, I don't know where this is coming from, but there are physical hard drives somewhere that hold the ISPs, that hold the websites. There are servers that are in physical. I just think all of this exists as electrons. And on an essence level, all of this does exist as essence. Maybe not exactly electrons, because the information I'm getting right now about that is electrons are part of the physical component of this. So to the unseen, electrons are actually very solid and real. But it's our interpretation of the pixels that make up our reality. There's a physical construct to this physical reality. Atoms and molecules are part of it. Electrons are part of it. We experience it in ever increasing levels of density. And in our body personalities, in our physical forms, that's what we're perceiving around us. And where we get stuck is thinking that this is the only thing that exists. We are operating as if our bodies are the only existence. This lifetime is the only one, and the only way it works is to go from, past to future. That it is working along a linear timeline within these particular layers. And working with unseen helps you expand to the greater all that is. And as I'm explaining this, I realize, that was my old mindset, is that there was the in-body and the out of the body, And that was all that is. It was a big deal for me to be working with the unseen on an angelic or Davic realm. And where I've expanded to in my consciousness shift, which you could say is into the 5D, is another term of it. But it is like going outside that box. It's like going behind the scenes of even the unseen to where it all is created. Language is so limiting with all of this. But so my experience now is working from behind the scenes before this is all fully constructed, and that is where the best explanation that we have here is, like quantum physics, which takes conventional physics and kind of throws it out the window, and quantum physics is all theoretical, and it's all random, and it's all unpredictable, it's all defying previous measurements. And that's the realm I navigate in now, which is frustrating as hell and sometimes scary as hell for the physical form. It's like, that means everything's falling apart every single day. And yet as consciousness, it's like, no, that means every single day is a new adventure. Every single day is something you can step into a new experience and have a new experience. So the main thing with accessing unseen help is that it is available. You can operate on any different level that you feel like with it. I dismissed it because I was no longer operating on the personality level, and you don't have to do that. You can, I'm not less involved, or you aren't less evolved if you're working with them as if they are, angels or devas or whatever. You can also work with them as electrons if you want. Interesting little Pixar figures. And we don't have to do it alone. Even the concept of aloneness doesn't make sense in the language of consciousness, since consciousness is everything. The aloneness comes from not fully being in our physical body, and then it's our body that feels lonely. It's really our body that has any of these senses of separation. But it becomes a lot more fun, I realize, when I am working in network, in conjunction. As an introvert, I really like to work by myself. And yet, introverts aren't necessarily anti-people. They just regain energy by being by themselves. And I also do really enjoy, for limited periods of time, being connected with people. And actually, as I am explaining this, is that being connected to unseen help isn't draining at all. There isn't that component to it. So I invite you to play with this in any way, shape, or form. And actually, if you look below, there's a link to my introductory webinar on accessing unseen help, and you might find some useful information in it. So if you like these videos, you can subscribe to them on YouTube. You can also sign up below to get them in your inbox. If you want to know more, my website is joan-newcomb.com. I write a weekly blog and newsletter. I also have a weekly podcast and radio show. I do meetups a few times a month around the Puget Sound in Seattle, Bellevue, Tacoma, and University Place. And if you want to know more about navigating your life as consciousness, from a higher level of consciousness, you can go to my website, joan-newcomb.com, and look at my coaching programs. So go to joan-newcomb.com, and I'll see you in another couple days with another Mystic Minute.